to the Business Blueprint Podcast, where we take you on an exciting adventure through our triumphs and challenges and failures in creating and maintaining a thriving 6, 7, and 8-figure business. Get ready to dive into our strategies, decisions, and yes, even valuable lessons we've learned from our missteps. But that's not all. We'll also bring you industry-leading guests who will provide you with their priceless insights and wisdom. Stay tuned because the captivating journey of the Business Blueprint begins right now. So, in doing that, how many, you talked about the administrative side of it. How long did you have to spend, reconciling trust accounts and going back through software?
Yeah. I didn't sign up for a lot of software right off the bat. So it was a lot of Excel spreadsheets and, different systems like that I was just manually having to keep up with. And, one thing about being on your own is that you can really understand your finances and understand the ins and outs of every single dollar that you spend. And so I just had all kinds of Excel spreadsheets. That's how I managed my trust account. That's how I managed my expenses, planned my budget. All of that was just directly on Excel spreadsheets. And that's something that kind of looking back, I almost miss now. Because it's a little bit harder once you sign up for different services and software that's supposed to track things for you, but you also don't like feel it and see it as clearly as when you're sitting there typing in, $2 for parking at this place and $5 on Staples or whatever it is, right? You feel it and you track it a little bit better when you're having to do that for every single little dollar that you spend.
And talking about expenses, one of the most important parts is how much income you make. How did you decide what pricing to charge people?
I kind of just looked around at what I knew the market rate was, quote unquote. And so from working in a couple of different law firms, I knew what their hourly rates were and, what their experience level was and all of that. So that kind of gave me a framework of understanding, okay, within this market, I can be within this kind of range. As a newer attorney, you obviously want to be a little bit lower because you don't have that 30 years of experience to fall back on. But I think I landed somewhere in kind of the lower quadrant of the market rate at the time. And with a lower overhead, you can charge a little bit of a lower rate and still have a decent profit, have a good margin. And so that was kind of how I set the rate, was really just trial and error. I think, if I were going to go back and do it again, I think you would want to look more specifically at, okay, how many dollars do I need to make and what sort of percentage, do I want to be bringing home for myself as the owner of this entity? I think there's a lot more sophisticated analysis that can go into that pricing equation. And then if you're trying to do any kind of like flat fee, making sure that you're accounting for all the time that you put in. If something's going to take me 20 hours worth of work to do, I don't want to charge $100 for it. You have to put it in line with the amount of work that you're doing as well.
Mm-hmm. And did you actually engage in any of those calculations when you were getting started?
No, not really. It was more like, what are other people kind of in my realm charging?
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to make sure I was being somewhat competitive and, fitting within the market and all of that. Definitely did not do sort of the overarching analysis of, okay, what's my expected revenue for the year and what's my profit margin? And, if I could go back and do it again, there's a lot more analysis that would probably go into it.
Would you actually do the analysis if you went back and did it again as a solo practitioner? Would you take the time and the effort and the mental capacity to go back and really set this, or would you try to just get moving forward?
Yeah, I mean, of course, it's easy to look back and say with today's mindset, what would you do? Hindsight's 2020. But I do think I would have benefited from doing more of that analysis up front. And I think, getting started, I was just kind of scrambling and taking, if someone said, oh, I've got these referrals for you, but they want a 20% discount, will you take them? Yeah, sure, whatever. What's 20%? Well, when you actually carry the math out, 20% is pretty huge, and you have to increase your volume drastically in order to hit the same profit margin. And so I do think there's scenarios like that where if I had done a little more analysis on the front end, I would have avoided situations like that. I would have avoided, there's some competition for like doing flat fee, really uncontested cases and things like that. And it's just a race to the bottom. You end up putting in a lot more time than it actually ends up being worth to you at the end, versus if you focus on other types of cases, other types of clients, you can, work less and profit more. So I do think that it would have benefited me, long term if I had avoided some of those situations.
Yeah, and I believe in Simon Sinek's book about the why, he discusses the commoditization of anything and how if you don't have a solid why of what you're doing, you'll end up trying to fight for pricing and you're racing to the bottom. So you're cutting into those profit margins, you're cutting into your ability to grow. And speaking about that why did you start your business?
Yeah. So initially it was kind of twofold. So I worked at a couple of different law firms, had some okay experiences, but had this feeling like I wasn't really getting to practice law the way that I wanted to. I wasn't really getting to advise clients the way that I thought they should be. It felt a little like clients were getting pushed into settlement agreements. Clients were getting pushed into situations that they maybe didn't want, didn't really line up with their goals. And so one of my initial goals for myself was just to be able to practice law the way that I wanted to, the way I felt like it should be practiced. And so that's something that still carries on to this day. We really try to be a client-focused organization, and that has to do with keeping in communication with your clients, but also letting your clients steer the ship. I can tell you all day long, this is probably what's going to happen in your case, or, you should do this or you should do that. But it's ultimately their life, right? It's their children, it's their finances, it's their house, it's their everything. And so they need to be the ones to ultimately make the decision that is right for them, even if I might have advised them to do something different. And so that was really fundamental from day one. I felt like I had seen so many situations where clients were just pushed into, oh, well, overall, this is a quote unquote good outcome for you, right? And so therefore you should go ahead and take the deal, but they're ultimately giving something up that was really, really important to them. And so I didn't want to practice law that way. So that was really number one. And then number two is once we started to expand and we started to grow the team, I felt like now I got to be the employer that I used to look for. And, I used to look for positions that offered attorneys some autonomy, that offered attorneys, the ability to have that client-centered approach, and all of that. And so now I'm on the other end. And if I were 10 years ago, me looking for a job, this is where I would want to work. I would absolutely gravitate towards this firm, and I would absolutely want to be an associate here. So it's just cool that now I get to be on the other end of that and create that opportunity that I used to look for.
Okay. And obviously, law in the past has been a male dominated industry. Coming up as a young associate, how did you feel about being in such a male dominated industry? Were you treated as an equal?
I would say I didn't have a whole lot of interactions that made me feel like, oh, I'm being, discriminated against or treated harshly because I'm a female. I would say I had like one or two opposing counsels that were significantly older, and, maybe didn't act in a way that I felt like was appropriate. But it wasn't anything extremely outlandish. It wasn't anything all that terrible. It is a male dominated industry still, I think, even though the majority of law school graduates are now women. It's kind of flipping. And so for me, with my graduating class, there was a ton of young women attorneys that were coming out of law school and getting started in their careers. So it's not like I was alone. There was plenty of us roaming through the courthouses and, going and practicing in front of these judges and everything. I can really only think of a couple of much older opposing counsels where it was a situation that I felt was like, this doesn't feel okay. And in a prior position, it was a little bit odd working for a much older attorney, but when I looked at who had previously worked at the firm, it seemed like he had exclusively hired young blonde women. That's just who he hired day in and day out. He had like never had a man work there, never had anybody else work there. And so that was a little like, ew. But I wouldn't say he necessarily treated me badly. It was just kind of weird, right? And that's kind of how most of those interactions were.
And you talk about law still being dominated by men. I think as companies continue to grow and as we continue to move forward, we'll probably see more female-led companies. But right now in law, most law firms that are over roughly 10 attorneys are actually owned by men. How would you say, being a law firm owner, and you're the only owner of this organization, being a law firm owner, how would you say the reception is within the community with both male and female attorneys?
I would say the more negative comments have actually come from older women in the community. And I don't know exactly what the reason is for that. I don't really dig in. I don't really, care to be all that interested, but the offhand sort of remarks about, who does she think she is? And, where did they come from anyway? Most of those comments that I've heard have actually come from older women in the community. And I don't know if there's an element of like jealousy that goes into that, or if there's, something else that might be at play. I just kind of move on, and continue doing what I'm doing. There are a couple of other law firm owners, I think, coming up now that are female, or that are all, multiple female partners, all women owned. And so we are seeing a lot of growth in this area, which is really cool. And so hopefully we'll continue to see that, and it can be positive for everybody, right? When I see another female owned law firm that's being really successful, it's like, heck yeah, let's, this is awesome. I don't see it as like, oh my gosh, who does she think she is trying to compete with me? We might even do the same sort of thing, or we might, have cases against one another. But I feel like if one of us succeeds, we all succeed, and we should all be kind of that hand on each other's back, lifting one another up, as opposed to tearing one another down.
And you talk about helping each other out. One of the biggest things that we see across most industries is people being held back by what appears to be their own thoughts or their own mindset. What is your mindset? You talk about helping people out, but what is your mindset about the number of clients? Are there enough clients to go around? Are there not enough clients to go around? And talk about a little bit about the market share that you're able to get.
Yeah, I am a big believer that there is more than enough business in this industry. And, I'm happy to send referrals out when we've got way too much volume coming in, and, let me make sure I pass you along to somebody I like who does good work, who's, going to take care of you properly and do your case the right way. And so that's really how I view it, is like, let's kind of all bring the industry up. Let's all bring the profession up to our standards of practice. I'm not here to necessarily take over every family law firm in town. But I hope that, by practicing the way that we practice, by focusing on our clients the way that we do, we're going to encourage other firms in the area to do the same thing. And then when we have opposing counsels on these cases, realistically, as a divorce law firm, we can only handle 50% of the clients anyway, right? I can't take 100% of the clients, because I just can't. So I want others in the market to do the same sorts of things that we do. I want them to also march their cases forward. I want them to also advocate for whatever's really important for their client, because at the end of the day, we all will do better. If we all practice in the same way, and if we all make sure the clients are taken care of appropriately. Mindset, like overall, that's a really tough question. And I know you and I have struggled with this kind of in and out in different areas. Trying to maintain that growth mindset of there's more opportunity, there's more that I can learn, there's more that, I can improve on, rather than falling back into that fixed mindset of, this is what we've done, this is how we do it, this is how we've always done it, always going to do it type of a thing. That is always a struggle. And, it's easy to kind of fall back into that fixed mindset and have to sort of push and consciously pull yourself out of it, and continue to move forward and grow the company.
Yeah, my mindset is incredibly important. Day in, day out, there are days that you sit back and say, hey, I've got a growing organization that is growing hundreds of percent year over year, but I'm tired. I don't want to answer another email. I don't want to answer another question. One of the things that is always hard is, how did you know that you had grown so much that you can no longer do it by yourself?
That is a tough one. So in the end of 2020, when you first joined me, we both were kind of struggling through this growth mindset of, now we have all this opportunity in the world in front of us. What are we going to do with it? Which way are we going to go with it? And so I think it was the beginning of 2021, just trying to mentally get a handle on hiring our first employee. And we're both very financially conservative, and we both had this mindset of, okay, we have to have this person's like complete yearly salary in the bank on day one before I ever hire them, because I want to have that like financial cushion. And getting over that mindset, and fortunately we have some good coaches, and we have some good networks, and we have some good people to go to for advice about these things, but sort of breaking through that to see that, okay, we don't have to have a full year's salary for every employee in the bank. We do have to have operating expenses for the next couple of weeks, and then once that employee starts to create a profit, they're going to be paying for themselves, and they're going to be creating a profit, and then we can reinvest that profit, and we can continue to expand. And so that was something that was like so incredibly hard for employee number one, and even like employees 1 through 10. I think at every single one we were struggling with, like, oh my gosh, this is such a huge financial obligation that we're taking on with each one of these people. And then after you cross a certain point, it just gets a little bit easier and a little bit easier and a little bit easier. But I would say even by like employee number 10, we were both still having the same conversation going back and forth of, can we really take this person on right now? Well, of course we can, because they're going to come in and they're going to do work, and they're going to, do better for our business. And in 3-4 weeks, we're going to be patting ourselves on the back for it. Right. And so now I think we've gotten past that. And we both really look for opportunities to add good people to the team whenever we can.
Yeah, I think that is important. What we want to really talk about, though, and focus on is, when was the decision made? I mean, I know for me, when we decided to hire somebody, it was looking at everything that we had to do on a day-to-day basis, all the hats that we had to wear, trying to decide, can I do the marketing? Can I do the advertising? Can I do the sales? Can I do the production? Can I do the billing? Can I do the collection? Can I do the accounting? And trying to really identify how many hats I could wear in a given day and still be effective in each one of those roles. And for me, from the business owner side into the production side, it's hard to switch my mind to say, look, I'm in a production mode as an attorney in a very conservative capacity, versus being in business where you have to be somewhat risk-taking. You cannot be risk-adverse in trying to grow a business. But I want to thank you for taking the time to talk to us today. And really, the next time that we talk, I really want to jump in, how the decision was made to hire that first person, what the finances look like, what was the mindset around saying, look, I can no longer do it all on my own. I need to bring in help. And then realizing that, hey, maybe instead of creating a dollar number on the bottom line, what I did was free up time within myself to create more profit on the top line. So, we really want to discuss that next week, but I want to thank you for taking the time to talk to us today. And I hope everybody looks forward to us talking more next week about what decisions were made to hire that first person, and what decisions were made to hire the second person and the third person, all the way up to your first C-suite hire. So again, this is the Business Blueprint Podcast, and I'm Charles Hatley here with Rebecca Melone. We hope you all enjoyed this and look forward to the more that are here to come. Thanks for tuning in. If you found this insightful and entertaining, be sure to hit subscribe below and join us on social media to get more insight into what we are going through each and every day.